This fat man with a natural beard carefully placed the woman on the table. He had intended to do something improper, but fortunately, he stopped in time. After all, this was the woman that the boss had taken a fancy to. That night, Frank prepared a bottle of good wine, and planned to go home to share it with his wife. However, as soon as he reached the door of his house, he heard continuous shouts coming from inside. Frank didn't rush in immediately. Instead, he just left quietly. Under the mental stimulation, Frank went to a nightclub he had never been to before and met Penny, who was dancing a pole dance there. Penny, with a curvy figure, stepped forward to strike up a conversation and tease Frank.
Do you want to do it a few times, Frank?
Frank had never experienced such a situation before. His mind became muddled, as if his brain was rushing with blood. Obviously, he had forgotten about his wife cheating on him, and all his attention was focused on Penny. However, Penny's actions were only to steal the other person's credit card. Afterwards, Penny proposed a 50-50 split with the boss. Not only was her proposal rejected outright by the boss, but he even wanted Penny to sleep with him. Penny made an excuse that she was too tired and wanted to go home. The boss immediately started beating and kicking her. Hearing the commotion, Frank decided to act like a real man for once. He then kicked the door open, and after a fight, he took Penny and left the nightclub. The next day, the two drove away at top speed. During the journey, they even changed to a very cool car. When their feelings deepened, the two parked the car by the side of the road, and had an intimate encounter. Afterwards, as Penny looked at the man in front of her, she felt a little guilty towards him. But before she could say anything, Frank got rid of his wedding ring, saying that he wanted to leave it forever in some dirty place. No one had ever treated Penny so sincerely before. It was only then that Penny told him that all her previous actions had been just a show. However, Frank thought that the past was in the past, and the present and future were more important. Thus, the two who cherished each other continued to move forward together. On the other side, the car broke down and there was no cell phone signal. Mary sat in the car, at a loss. Just then, a shabby rescue vehicle pulled up behind her car. A man with a yellowish beard, John, got out and said he could help change the tire. However, Mary said she couldn't find a spare tire. John checked her trunk and realized that Mary in front of him was very naive. He then towed the car and took Mary back to the rest stop. Upon arriving at the rest stop, Mary left a message for her father first, telling him that he must come to pick her up early the next morning before she could hang up the phone. She was startled by John, who walked in. He said a few words and gave her a room key. By the way, at the same time, Frank and Penny were kindly reminded by a criminal police officer 30 miles ahead. Supplies were scarce and there was no cell phone signal. It would be best to replenish supplies at the rest stop ahead. Halfway through the drive, a strange-looking man with white hair who acted oddly suddenly appeared after saying a bunch of strange things. He asked Penny if she could give him a ride. However, he was refused by the vigilant Penny, who also left him a police officer's business card. Before dark, the two arrived at the rest stop, and planned to stay there for a night before leaving. They met head-on with the employees here, John and Charlie. John said that not only did the rest stop have honeymoon suites, but Charlie could also help fill up their car with gas. So the two went to the front desk, and booked a honeymoon room with a king-size bed. They even couldn't help but show their affection in front of John. When the two were about to get in the car to get their luggage, they were startled by Charlie, who came out of the car. Charlie explained that he had already filled up the car with gas for them. However, the love-struck couple didn't take it seriously, and were just immersed in their own world.
Can I swat you on the ass as you walk away?
Charlie, who was hiding nearby, saw the two leave, and quickly dragged a bag of mysterious things to the kitchen. Late at night, he took out a butcher's knife and chopped down. It turned out that this rest stop was a murder den. Everyone inside was a pervert. At the same time, Mary, who had just taken a shower, heard a noise and leaned against the window to look out. By a coincidence, she saw Charlie walking swaggeringly from the opposite side, with a trophy in his hand. Scared, she hurriedly drew the curtains, wondering if she had misseen Charlie, who never thought there was someone in the room, went to find John to discuss how to deal with it. Before long, John came to Mary's door, pretended to be kind to ask about her condition, and invited her to have dinner together. At this moment, Mary was so scared that she wet her pants, and had no appetite for dinner. Hiding behind the door, she refused him, and John had to leave in embarrassment. In the dead of night, a white car parked in front of the inn. The person who got out was exactly the strange man who had asked Penny for help during the day, and he was also the leader of this group, seeing no one around, he sneaked into Penny and Frank's room and checked their identity information. He also checked Penny's clothes by the way. At the same time, Penny and Frank were sitting in the bar, chatting lively with John's wife. Just then, the leader pushed the door open and walked in, talking to the two about his prominent family background. His words left everyone stunned, but Penny remained indifferent. He then immediately said that if Penny chose to be with him, he could be loyal to her forever. Both he and his property would belong to Penny. If she was willing, she could go wait for him in the white car outside. As soon as he finished speaking, Penny turned around and walked out. No matter how Frank called her, it was useless. The leader held Frank down and said that he had seen many women like Penny, who could abandon anything for money. The dejected Frank felt a sudden wave of disappointment when he saw the white car had vanished. He returned to the room in sorrow, only to find Penny lying on the sofa. This filled him with unexpected joy, and he immediately believed in love again. On the other side, the leader was staring at the surveillance screen, suppressing his anger. When he opened another video, he surprisingly found that Mary's father was a policeman. To avoid unnecessary trouble, he instructed George and his wife to go and handle the situation. After a whole night of intense intimacy, Frank and Penny decided to leave after having breakfast. Mary, who was upstairs, happened to overhear them, so she took the chance to sneak into their car and hide. When they arrived at the restaurant, Frank and Penny ordered breakfast from Linda and started chatting happily. In fact, Charlie had already put a sedative in their coffee. Before the two could drink the coffee, Linda pressed the bell in front of her excitedly. Upon hearing the sound, Charlie picked up his gun and rushed out. At this moment, Frank also pulled out his gun to confront him. Charlie, realizing he had met his match, immediately lost his nerve and quietly put down his weapon. In a fluster, Frank and Penny left the inn. On the other side, John and his wife saw a police car in the distance and realized Mary's father had arrived, so the two put on a show, fighting and grappling in the middle of the road. The sheriff, who got out of the car to check, was immediately shot in the head by John's wife. Not long after, the couple, who were on their way back to the rest stop, received a call from the leader telling them to intercept Frank and Penny's car. As soon as he finished speaking, the two cars passed each other. Seeing the police car catching up from behind, Penny and Frank lowered their guard and slowly pulled over to stop. However, the person who got out was John, dressed in a police uniform. In the blink of an eye, Frank and Penny were arrested. Mary was trembling with fear. She took advantage of the distraction to push open the car door and run as fast as she could. At this moment, John's wife calmly took out a long gun. A loud bang was heard, and Mary fell to the ground immediately. In this way, the couple drove back to the rest stop with their prey in the car and called for Charlie to come out and unload. Charlie carried Penny into the basement. Frank was thrown into a deep pit filled with corpses. Looking at the young and beautiful woman in front of him, the timid Charlie forcibly suppressed his desire and locked her in an iron cage. Before long, the leader also returned to the rest stop by car. He kindly assigned a task to John's wife. This scene was just seen by John, who was not far away. However, judging from his reaction, he should have long known that his wife had cheated on him. Before dinner in the evening, the leader actually led everyone in saying a pre-dinner prayer. Could it be that they wanted to alleviate their sense of guilt through prayer? Perverted minds are really unpredictable. Later, the leader went to the place where Frank was detained and tried to persuade him to join their group. However, in Frank's eyes, he was just an unreasonable crazy old man. Before leaving, the leader told Frank that the bucket in the corner nearby would be enough to sustain him for a few weeks, but only if he didn't starve to death first. The leader then went to Penny and tried to trick her into becoming his wife and bearing children for him. However, Penny's heart only belonged to Frank, and no one could change that. The leader couldn't understand why Penny was so persistent, but he still didn't give up hope. He fantasized that Penny would come around soon, then drove away after speaking. At this moment, John, standing on the mountain, watched the direction the leader had left in, deep in thought. In the middle of the night, Mary suddenly woke up. She looked at her father, covered in blood beside her, and burst into tears in despair. But she just happened to catch a glimpse outside the car window. John was strangling his wife with a belt. However, John noticed Mary too. He just stepped forward and opened the car door. At the same time, Penny spotted the steel nail on the ground and immediately had an idea. She then began to seduce Charlie. What man could resist such temptation? So Charlie couldn't help but open the iron gate. On the other side, John, after killing his wife, sat by the edge of the deep pit and poured out his grievances to Frank about the unfairness of the world. He said he would neither help Frank nor betray his own group. After speaking, he jumped down from the edge of the deep pit. In the end, Frank climbed out of the deep pit using John's body as a support. However, even though Penny had seriously injured Charlie with the steel nail, Charlie kept clinging to her foot, making it impossible for Penny to reach the key right in front of her. Fortunately, Frank arrived just in time and killed Charlie. Linda immediately called the leader, but by the time the leader arrived, Frank and Penny had already driven away. Unexpectedly, this perverted old man took a shortcut and appeared right in the middle of the road, but Frank's car broke down at this very moment. Then, through all kinds of desperate efforts and the power of love, the car miraculously started. Yet the leader standing opposite actually tried to stop the car. The result was as everyone could imagine. Just as the leader was on his last breath, Mary finally got the chance to take revenge on him. Unexpectedly, the leader still had a breath left, so Mary immediately shot him in the head to finish him off. Back in the city, Frank took Penny to his home to cut ties with his wife. Unexpectedly, his wife's lover suddenly appeared and started hurling all kinds of insults, even at Penny. Frank immediately knocked the man down and beat him up, then got in the car and left the scene with Penny, leaving his ex-wife standing there alone. From then on, the two lived a happy life. The movie Frank and Penelope is undoubtedly a thrilling film that makes viewers' hearts race and leaves them thrilled. Set against the backdrop of a desolate highway, it depicts Frank and Penny's desperate escape between life and death, allowing the audience to deeply feel their unbreakable love and fearless spirit. Facing life and death, the two had only two choices: escape together alive or die together. At the same time, the director uses slow-motion shots to capture the violent moments of splattering blood, and uses the contrast between warm and cool tones of light and shadow to metaphorize the changes in the characters' fates. The shots of the motel corridor and the basement iron cage, with their cramped, confining composition, give the images more dramatic tension. Recurring symbols such as the Bible and the cross create religious satire, contrasting sharply with the bloody crimes. The deep pit scene not only shows the character's current predicament, but also metaphorizes the abyss of human nature. As an R-rated crime thriller, the film's profound connotation beneath its bold presentation has been praised as a new exploration of genre films in the post-Tarantino era. The film's unique visual style and narrative rhythm have formed a distinct identity worldwide. Its aesthetic of violence has also been referenced and paid tribute to by many emerging directors. If you like my channel, please like and subscribe to it.